Why was the radio so quiet? Not silence, not peace, just quiet, the kind that only happened before something irreversible. Rachel flew low. Dust shimmered over the desert like the heat itself was trying to hide something. Her Apache go over the terrain, hugging the dry wadi's curves like it had been stitched to the landscape. Every movement was a whisper. Every second was rehearsed, but quiet. Quiet meant something was late, or watching. She didn't like either. The terrain ahead looked like a rusted spine, ridges sharp and brittle, with long ravines where shadows went to disappear. She didn't trust shadows. Not in this part of the world. Not after what happened last time. But today wasn't about last time. Today, it was about holding the line. Alone. The mission brief had been simple, at least on paper. Marine Recon had eyes on a convoy. Enemy trucks nestled under camo netting, hoping to sneak through a forgotten wash road. Intel said they were carrying electronic gear. Maybe something worse. Marines were in position to intercept, but their exit route was vulnerable, so they called in Rachel. One bird, one crew, but sometimes that's all it takes. Her hands moved without needing permission, left hand steady on the cyclic, right thumbing over weapon systems. Everything was green, fuel at threshold, ammunition full. For now, Stork, her co-pilot, was already leaned into the scope like a hawk on the edge of a dive. He tapped the side of his helmet twice and said, "I've got a good feeling about this one." Rachel didn't smile. "Not yet. You said that at Barak Ridge," she replied, adjusting the collective. "We came home on one engine and 30 rounds," he shot back. "Exactly," she said. "And we came home." The comms crackled faint, degraded by the terrain command repeated the same thing for the third time. "Convoy located. Marines in position. Confirm effect on target. No delays. No pressure." Rachel had heard that tone before, the kind of clipped urgency from officers who hadn't seen sand under their boots in a while. But she didn't argue, she just flew. That was the job. They came in low through a break, in the ridgeline, sandstone cliffs on one side, sunburned ravines on the other. Rachel guided the Apache like it was an extension of her body, not a weapon, but a scalpel. This wasn't about destruction. It was about precision. "What's the rule again?" Stork asked, shifting in his harness. "Node first, then mobility, then firepower. Love it when they stall," he muttered. She caught a flicker on the eastern edge of her HUD, faint dust, rising just enough to be wrong. Could be wind, could be backup. She didn't call it out yet. Not until she was sure. There was no margin for panic in her cockpit. "Strike Team Bravo. You are 1 minute to mark." "Confirm." Stork responded fast. "Blade 1 is inbound and visual. Holding low. Call it clean." They were seconds from the line when Rachel saw the convoy, half buried under netting, just where Recon said they'd be. 8 trucks, spaced and staggered. The comms vehicle was second from the front, the kind that folds antennas like a fist hides a blade. Lead truck had a mounted gun. Rear vehicle looked armored. She slid behind a hill, using the terrain to mask their approach. Her voice didn't change. "Target locked. Comes vehicle. Send it." Stork fired. The chain gun purred like a saw through silk, the kind of burst you don't hear until it's already ripped the metal. The vehicle twisted, smoke blooming sideways like ink in water. A body rolled out, then she pitched forward and released. The first hellfire. It curved clean. The lead truck lifted off the earth like it had been pulled by a string, then slammed back down in fire. The rear vehicle braked and started to reverse, but Stork was already tracking. Another burst, sharp and final. That truck didn't move again. Radio chatter spiked. "Blade 1, this is Reaper Actual. Convoy hit. Engaging now." Rachel responded, without turning her head. "CC Reaper. Overhead. You've got cover." From above, the Marines seemed to rise from the sand itself. Fire teams moving with practiced speed, bounding toward the smoking wrecks. No wasted motion, no hesitation. This wasn't luck. This was the result of 100 hours of training and 10 seconds of perfect timing. Stork tracked a group fleeing from the rear truck. "Want me to clip them?" Rachel studied the scene. "No. Save ammo. They're running." Another vehicle peeled out, a runner, half covered in camo mesh. She marked it instantly. "Get its tires." Stork fired a short, deliberate burst. Dust jumped. The vehicle spun, then flipped, landing on its roof with a thud that echoed even at altitude. It should have felt like control, like dominance. But Rachel knew better. Multiple contacts inbound, she said, watching the dust trails in the northeast. Distance unknown. Direction, northeast, possibly side trail. Copy, came Storks.com reply. But his fingers moved faster now. Then, the tone changed, a rising, angry scream in her headset. Missile lock, she said, diving hard left. Flares punched out. The sky behind them erupted in white smoke as the missile bent toward the decoy and detonated near a ridge. Rocks bounced off the tail. Boom. The bird shook. Rachel felt the thud in her spine. Still flying. Status, she asked. Minor shrapnel. Right side. Systems good. Rachel stayed low, scanning, thinking. That missile hadn't come from a vehicle. It came from a rock formation. Too small to hide behind. Just enough to fire from. She called it in. Reaper actual. Blade 1 took anti-air origin southeast. Ridge no visible reload. Watch for more. Copy. Blade. We're accelerating exfil packages secured. They had 4 minutes to move. 4 minutes in a desert where 4 seconds could mean life or death. And now, the game was changing. Because when backup doesn't come, and the enemy adapts faster than your orders can travel, someone has to hold the line. And in that sky, in that moment, it was her. One bird, one hand on flight, one hand on weapons, and one decision already made. She wasn't leaving until they were safe. What do you do when the enemy won't stop coming, and you're the only thing between them and your people? Rachel didn't answer that question with words. She answered with action. Her hands never left the controls. Even as the Apache banked hard, behind the ridge and rattled under the aftershock of that missile, she moved with the kind of precision that came from discipline, not instinct. Below, the desert had erupted. The Marines were moving fast, collecting, securing, loading. But they were still exposed, and the enemy was closing in. Fast. Double quotes. Next strike window, northeast ridge, she said, scanning the incoming dust trails. I want to slow their line, before it curves into the basin. Got it, Stork replied, set and ready. He sounded fine. But Rachel glanced sideways. He wasn't. The blood on his shoulder was starting to seep through the fabric of his flight suit, slow, but constant. His right arm hung limp, fingers twitching against the edge of his seat. She didn't say anything. She couldn't afford to. Not yet. The Apache ducked behind another low-rise profile, masked, elevation steady. From here, the field looked like a chessboard. The Marines were pawns in motion. The enemy a fist driving straight through their flank. Rachel adjusted trim, eased the collective forward. Then she waited. The enemy trucks crested the rise, 5 in total, heavy with weapons, turrets, and momentum. They weren't probing. They were charging. The lead vehicle hit the ravine with speed, dropping into the creek bed like it belonged there. Rachel fired. The chain gun tore through the first truck like it was paper. The second burst into flame before it had time to swerve. Chaos rolled backward like a wave. Tires spun. Doors flew open. Men scattered. Then the second missile came. This one was faster, smarter. The warning didn't even finish screaming before it hit. The nose of the Apache jolted. Not from a direct hit, but close enough. The explosion cracked just off their front end, shattering the cockpit's viewport and sending a knife storm of glass and debris across both seats. Rachel kept flying. Barely. Stork didn't. His head snapped back. For one terrifying moment, Rachel thought he was unconscious. But he blinked, teeth grit, face pale. I'm good, he muttered. Keep flying. He wasn't good, and she knew it. His right arm was gone to pain. His systems were out. He couldn't fire, couldn't guide, couldn't spot. That left her with everything. Flight, weapons, countermeasures, navigation, alone. She reached across with her left hand, pulled the override. Systems blinked. HUD recalibrated. Gun control switched to her side. The Apache didn't complain. But it felt heavier now, not in weight, but in responsibility. Ground radio snapped in. This is Reaper actual. We're pinned. Second element flanking from southeast. We've got wounded. Automatic fire crackled behind the voice. They weren't just pinned. They were nearly surrounded. Rachel didn't think. She acted. She brought the bird around, fast and wide, circling the smoke trail from the destroyed vehicles. Then she punched low and fired a burst into the rearmost truck of the second wave. It twisted sideways, jackknifing the convoy and stalling the others for just long enough. Blade 1, engaging, she said over the net. Continue movement. I'll cover your 6. A Marine voice broke through in the background, ragged, disbelieving. Where the hell did these guys come from? Rachel knew. That trail had been marked as defunct during briefing. But in deserts like these, nothing stayed dead for long. The enemy adapted. Always. The ground commander came back on. We can't hold more than 5 minutes. Repeat. 5 minutes, and we roll, or we're boxed in. Rachel didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her fingers were already dancing across both sticks. The Apache weaving through sky and smoke like a blade through silk. Her shadow swept across the ground. A moving target, a decoy, a shield, tracer. Rounds followed her, but she stayed one step ahead. Short bursts, rapid movement. She wasn't clearing the field. She was shaping it, breaking rhythm, delaying the inevitable. Stork groaned beside her, voice thin but impressed. You're flying, like a damn surgeon. Still, she didn't look at him. Instead, she looked northeast, and her stomach dropped. A third group, smaller, faster, likely motorbikes or light pickups, closing in from the far ridge. If they reached the convoy's escape route before it moved, it'd be over. No time to engage, just she needed misdirection. Terrain manipulation. Something to buy more seconds. The Marines were almost ready. She saw one MRAP shift into gear, wounded already loaded, engines screaming in the dust. She dropped back, into the ravine, hugging the curve, then rolled tightly around the outer bend and looped back toward the third threat line. Storr groaned again. You're done for now, she said quietly. He didn't argue. The Apache rose above the last rise, perfectly timed, just in line with the advancing third wave. Dust rolled beneath her. The Marines had begun to move. Slow, but rolling. And that meant only one thing. Rachel had to make space. But no more orders. No backup. No second pilot. No time. Just her. And 5 minutes to stop the collapse of everything. There comes a moment in every battle when time fractures, when seconds stretch too long and choices collapse into instinct. For Rachel, that moment came just before the final missile left her rail. She had one left, just one. Her Hellfire systems blinked, steady on the HUD. The last clean shot she'd get before the Apache gave in to its wounds. The fuel warning was screaming. The right engine was coughing smoke. And behind her, Stork had finally stopped speaking. His breathing was still there. Shallow, weak, but present. And so was the third wave moving fast and low. A wedge of motorbikes and light trucks weaving through the outer ridge, aiming to cut off the Marines before they could reach the evac corridor. Too fast to chase, too close to ignore. So Rachel did what only a pilot on the edge of empty could do. She climbed. Hard. The Apache roared upward like it had something to prove, engine screaming against the weight of its own damage. She climbed past the ridgeline, into the blue blaze of the open sky, high enough that the incoming fire couldn't trace her angle, but not so high that she lost sight of the terrain below. She saw them clearly now. 10, maybe 12 targets, motorbikes fanned in a crescent, trucks behind them, light, fast, vicious. They weren't just coming for a fight, they were coming to end it, to close the teeth of the trap. Rachel locked the lead vehicle. Eat this, she whispered. The Hellfire flew true, a hard, merciless streak of vengeance that caught the lead truck just before it cleared the final outcrop. The explosion lit up the ridge like a desert sunrise. The vehicle flipped, struck the one behind it, and tore through the outer edge of the group. It was enough. Enough to break formation. Enough to make the others scatter. Not enough to kill them all. But that wasn't the point. Rachel didn't need to win. She just needed to delay. The Apache dipped hard to the left as she dove again, skimming the canyon floor now, her rotors inches from rock. She released flares behind her as she twisted around the bend, baiting the next wave of gunfire that tore into the ridge wall. Not her bird. Below, the Marines were moving fast now. Convoy crawling over rock, engines grinding, gunners posted high and firing controlled bursts into the dust behind them. Rachel's voice cracked through the coms. Reaper, actual. Blade 1. Third wave hit. Partial scatter. You're clear north. Go now. The reply came instant. Copy. Blade. Rolling. Now, you good? She didn't answer. Because she wasn't. The Apache's control panel flickered. Her hydraulics were hot. Something was leaking from under the seat. And for the first time in years, Rachel felt the controls resist her. Not like a machine disobeying, but like a horse too tired to run. Behind her, Stork coughed. One word. Fuel. She checked. 10 minutes, maybe. And then the left engine coughed once, and died. Rachel took the bird low again. slowing, masking her retreat behind a rock shelf. She watched the Marines push north, engines howling, tires spitting gravel. She exhaled. They were going to make it. That meant she'd done her job. That also meant she wasn't leaving. Not with the Apache this crippled. Not with her co-pilot half-conscious and bleeding. Not when the enemy was still looking for payback. She swung wide behind the southern ridge, found a natural dip in the terrain, and brought the bird down slow, almost reverent, like she was putting it to bed. Dust swept past as the rotors spun down. Then silence. Not the quiet of peace, the quiet of aftermath. She pulled her helmet off. The heat inside her skull was unbearable. Her face was streaked with blood, some hers, some Stork's. She leaned back against the seat, eyes closed for a second. Then she heard it. Engines. Faint, distant, but coming. The third wave hadn't stopped. They were regrouping, searching, scanning for heat signatures. And in this part of the desert, a smoking Apache was a beacon. Rachel looked at Stork. He was still breathing. She looked at her. Sidearm. Still HOLSTERED. Then she looked at the sky. Still empty. No rescue, no cavalry, no gunship. This was the part no one trains you for. The part where you've done everything right, held the line, protected your team, completed the mission, but the battlefield still wants more. The part where the uniform doesn't matter, just the will. Rachel climbed out slowly. The sun hit her like a hammer. Her knees shook, but she stayed upright. She pulled Stork's sidearm from his vest, checked the mag. 7 rounds. She'd make them count. She found a rock shelf above the Apache's position, laid flat, aimed toward the sound of the engines. And waited. She wasn't trying to win now. She was just trying to remind them, whoever they were, however many, that this desert still had defenders, that this wasn't surrender. It was the last chapter of a promise. No one gets left behind. This is where I make my stand. She had 30 feet of rock between her and the basin floor. An overheating sidearm. 7 rounds. And a co-pilot. Bleeding out in the wreckage of a dead Apache. The desert was so quiet now. It felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. Rachel lay prone, rifle steady, eyes squinting against the sun glare bouncing off the sand. She could see their silhouettes now. 5 of them, maybe 6, scattered, but methodical. Light trucks rolling slow across the flats, motorbikes weaving through the rocks, search patterns tight. They were hunting, and she was the only prey. She didn't panic. She counted shadows. She picked landmarks, and then she keyed her comes one, last time. Blade 1 to any Allied aircraft in vicinity. I am down at grid 300 to buy 419. Bird is disabled. Pilot wounded. Marines have cleared north. I repeat, Marines are out. They made it. No answer. Static. She knew there wouldn't be. Still, she added quietly, holding position. Last stand. Tell command, I did my job. She clicked off the mic and stared down the ridge like it was a firing range. The first enemy rider came into view 10 seconds later. Black scarf, rifle slung, relaxed posture. Didn't think the bird was still manned. That was his mistake. Rachel's first shot caught him center chest before he even dismounted. He fell backwards. The motorbike spun, crashed into the dirt. The others scattered again, not retreating, just adjusting. Smarter now, quieter. She'd just confirmed what they were wondering. There was someone still alive in that Apache, and they wanted to see who. Rachel ducked low, changed positions. She counted her remaining rounds. 6. She scanned right. A figure moved between rocks, fast, careful, using cover. Another shot. This one harder. Angle weird, light blinding. She took a breath and fired anyway. The man dropped, but she knew better than to celebrate. Her heartbeat was slowing now, not from calm, from heat, from dehydration, from everything she'd lost in the last hour. She pressed her cheek to the stock. 5. Back at the Apache. Stork stirred. His voice cracked over the intercom rate. She clicked on without turning. Still here. We're fine, he groaned. She heard him move. I can't feel my legs. Don't need them right now. You're good. Just stay low. He paused. You still flying? She almost smiled. Sort of. Another shadow flicked past her scope. This one was smart, using the sunlight behind him to mask approach. She held her breath, tracked, squeezed. The shot clipped him in the thigh. He dropped, rolled, tried to crawl. She fired again, for she shifted again. Her body was trembling now. Not fear, just blood loss. Adrenaline crashing. The Apache had spilled fuel into the dirt below. Smoke was rising from its rear vents. They were both dying, her and the bird, but they were doing it on their own terms, like warriors, like ghosts that wouldn't quit. Then, for a moment, silence, not the peaceful kind, the calculating kind. She knew that sound. It meant the enemy was coordinating, plotting a full breach. Maybe a pincer movement, maybe a distraction, maybe worse. Her hand hovered over the last grenade in her belt. If they rushed at once, she'd use it. But not before. She glanced down at Stork through the shattered canopy glass. He was watching her, face white, lips cracked. I never said it, he croaked, but you're the best I've ever flown with. She didn't look away from the ridge, just said, I know. That's when the sound hit her. Faint at first, above the horizon. Not engines on the ground. Rotors. Big ones. Rachel froze. Her radio crackled. Blade 1, this is Guardian Actual. We have your smoke. 10 seconds out. Pop green if you're still up. Rachel blinked hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. She reached into her vest, pulled the last smoke. Green. Pulled the pin. Through it, the canister hissed to life, pluming thick, vivid color into the air beside the bird. And then, they came, to Apaches. Fresh, loaded mean. Behind them, a Blackhawk, gunship escort, medevac trailing. One of them dove immediately, the chain gun opening up with thunder, tracing a perfect arc across the ridge where the enemy had been assembling. Rachel ducked as rock and dust exploded all around her. She didn't move, didn't fire again. She just watched as her relief arrived like a hammer from the sky. Stork coughed again, louder this time. Hell of an entrance, he muttered. She laughed, and it hurt, but it felt good. Like finishing a song you thought you'd forgotten. The sky doesn't forget. The noise was gone now. Not just the gunfire, not just the shouting. Everything. Gone. Replaced by the soft hum of medical systems, the beep of monitors, and the low murmur of voices just outside a canvas curtain. Rachel sat upright in a med tent at forward operating base. Titus 3, IVs in her arm, a patch over her temple, and 2 cracked ribs wrapped in gauze. Her flight suit lay folded in a plastic bin beside the cot. Her dog tags still hung from her neck. She hadn't asked for a mirror. She didn't need one to know how she looked, like someone who'd climbed out of hell with pieces missing, across the tent. Stork was sleeping under a thin blanket, oxygen tubing taped to his nose, right arm immobilized. They said he'd keep the arm just barely. The nerve damage was bad, the blood loss worse. He'd be on the next med flight out. Rachel wouldn't, not yet. Not until they cleared her for decompression. Not until the investigation was done. And not until she gave her full report. They brought her in 2 hours later. COS, office, hot, sand-worn, no air conditioning. Colonel Finnegan sat behind the desk, gray hair, broad shoulders, expression like granite, a digital tablet in one hand, a half-drunk coffee in the other. He didn't offer her a seat, but she sat anyway. He watched her for a long time without speaking. Then he said, So, you held the line. She didn't answer, didn't need to. He tapped the tablet. You and Stork weren't even assigned to that sector. You rerouted mid-air, ignored RO airspace boundaries, violated low-fuel protocols, and stayed in a hot zone long after every sane pilot would have bugged out. She nodded once. Yes, sir. Another long pause. Then, softly, You saved 37 Marines. Rachel didn't react. She just looked out the window. The desert was still there, quiet, endless, waiting. The colonel leaned forward. You know what they're calling you, out there. She turned her head slightly. What? The ghost in the sky. He let that sit for a moment. They say you disappeared behind the ridge and came back like an angel with hellfire in your hands. They say you held off 2 full waves alone. They say you bought them every second they needed, and didn't blink. She looked back at him now. Her voice was flat. I did my job. Finnegan smiled, but not kindly. Your job was to provide air cover. You did that, but staying behind. He raised an eyebrow. That wasn't duty. That was choice. Rachel didn't blink. I wasn't leaving Stork, and I wasn't letting them circle the Marines from behind. You want to court-martial me, sir? Go ahead. But I'd do it again. He looked at her, looked hard. Then set the tablet down. We're not here to court-martial you, warrant officer. We're here to figure out how the hell you did what you did, and whether we can train more like you. Outside the room, the sky turned orange. Sunset over sand. A wind kicked up, soft and sharp, cutting through tents and antennas and satcom dishes. Rachel stepped out of the office after the meeting, breathing deep for the first time in days. Her ribs hurt. Her knees shook, but her eyes were steady. She walked past a group of Marines on their way back from briefing, young, loud, covered in sweat and dust. One of them stopped when he saw her. He snapped to a crooked salute. "Ma'am, you saved us. I don't know how, but thank you." She nodded once, didn't speak. She didn't have to. He held the salute until she passed, then said under his breath, "Ghost in the sky." That night, Rachel sat alone on a shipping crate beside the airstrip. No rotors, no engine noise. Just the whine of the wind and the distant thunder of tank treads moving across the dark. She watched the silhouette of an Apache take off under moonlight, a different tail number, different crew, but the same sound. She closed her eyes, and for a second, she was back inside the cockpit, sun in her face, smoke trailing behind, 7 rounds in the mag, enemy closing, hands steady. Heart calm. No backup. No fear, just the mission. Just the moment. Her radio was off now, but if it hadn't been, if someone had asked her what now, Rachel, she would have answered the same way she did in the air, still flying. A hero walks alone. The medal came 2 weeks later. A silver cross, velvet box, stiff ceremony. 4-star general flew in for it. Cameras, flags, speeches thick with words like valor and courage and sacrifice. Rachel stood in the desert sun, one arm still in a sling, hair tucked tight beneath her cover, boots scuffed and sweat soaking through her uniform. She didn't smile, she didn't speak. The citation read aloud sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone braver, bigger, immortal, for extraordinary heroism under fire, sustained engagement despite near-to-tell aircraft failure. Actions directly resulted in the survival of 37 Marines. Applause followed. Rachel's face didn't change. She'd killed. She'd almost died. She'd watched the sky go dark through a cracked canopy, with blood on her face and her co-pilot fading beside her. They wanted to call that glory, but she knew what it was: war. Back at the barracks, the room they gave her was clean, quiet. Quiet. She hadn't slept right since the crash. Her dreams kept circling, rotors in her ears, static in her head, the smell of smoke and blood and scorched sand. Sometimes she'd wake with her hand gripping the edge of the bed like she was still holding a throttle. Stork was gone now. Medevaced to Germany for rehab. She got updates from a nurse. Said he was healing, asking for her. Sent her a voice note that said, "You saved my life, wretch. I owe you everything." She hadn't replied yet, didn't know how. It felt like replying would make it all real, final, like saying, "Thank you" after a funeral. The brass gave her options: stateside, desk job, training rotation at Fort Rucker, early retirement with full honors. She turned them all down, didn't give reasons, didn't have to. Some warriors come home, others just orbit closer to silence. Then came the press. They didn't knock, just pushed their way through the chain of command like journalists always do when a story gets blood in it. The girl in the gunship, the lone pilot who held the line, Apache, Angel, that was the one that stuck. They asked for interviews, they sent book offers, podcasts, invites, Hollywood scripts. She ignored every one, until one reporter found her on the edge of the fob, cleaning her sidearm beside a fuel truck. He was young, polite, called her M. He said, "People want to understand what you were thinking out there, what you felt." She looked up at him, tired, unreadable. "You want a headline?" He blinked, nodded. "I wasn't feeling anything. I was flying, and he was bleeding, and they were running. That's it." The reporter tried again, but the moment when you cut him off. "Write this down. Some of us aren't heroes. Some of us are just too damn stubborn to leave our people behind." Then she stood, holstered her weapon, and walked away. But not everyone saw her as just stubborn. To the men she saved, she was something else. At Chow, Marines would find her, not to ask questions, but just to sit near her, silent reverence, respect. You don't speak out loud. Like watching a storm that didn't break you. Some started carrying a patch, black silhouette of an Apache over red sand. Underneath, she held the line, unofficial, but earned. One night, weeks later, she found herself alone again, this time near the old helipad, staring at a grounded Apache being stripped for maintenance. Same shape, same smell, different tail number. She walked to it, put a hand on the fuselage. She could still feel the hum in her bones, still hear the warning tones, still taste the metal in her mouth when the cockpit cracked and the flames licked the sky. But more than that, she remembered the stillness, the second before she climbed, the second before she fired that last hellfire, the second where she knew this would end with her, or it wouldn't end at all. She sat there for a while, the desert wind whispering past, stars overhead like silent witnesses. She wasn't crying, she wasn't shaking, she just was worn, burnt, alive, and in some quiet part of herself, she realized something. She didn't need the medals. She didn't need the headlines. She didn't need to explain herself to anyone, because the sky remembered. The dust, the fire, the impossible odds, and the woman who wouldn't leave. The return to the sky 6 months later. They called her back, not officially, not by order, just a quiet message routed through command. We've got a bird that needs flying. No glory, no cameras, just dust, altitude, and a squad pinned to. Far from help. You in? Rachel didn't reply. She packed her bag. The outpost was smaller this time, barely a speck on the map, pinned between two ridge lines and a whole lot of nowhere. Marines had chased a cell through the valley, got stuck behind a flash flood, and were taking accurate fire from elevated positions. Close air support was too far. QRF was grounded, and the new pilots, they were green. So they called the one ghost they knew would answer. Rachel stepped onto the tarmac like she'd never left. Same boots, same gloves, same slow ritual of checking the bird, touching every bolt, every blade, every corner of the cockpit. This one wasn't her old Apache, but it felt close. A newer model, fresh paint, no scars. Yet Stork wasn't with her. He was recovering in Texas, learning how to walk again. Sent her a voice message that morning. You see the sky today, Ratch. It's waiting for you. She didn't reply, just climbed in, strapped down. And lit the engines. The sun was low when she took off, all orange glare and deep shadows rolling across the hills. The desert greeted her with silence, then wind, then the familiar hum in her bones. Altitude Tacoma 000. Speed holding systems. Green. Weapons hot. She dipped low, sweeping the valley like a blade. Comes crackled. Guardian 2, this is Bastion Command. You've got eyes. She keyed the mic. Eyes on. Moving in. They're dug in, halfway up the ridge, west side. Small arms and RPGs. Our boys are exposed. She angled right, found the RIDGELINE. Then she saw it. Muzzle flashes, tucked in rock shadows. Men darting behind cover. Marines crouched in a dried-out wash. Completely pinned. No time for perfect. Just time for precise. Rachel moved like she'd never left. First pass. Laser guided. Hellfire out. The ridge exploded. Dust fire. Chaos. Second pass. Chain gun. A line of thunder stitched the rocks. Clean. She could feel the recoil all the way through her chest like a second heartbeat. Then she circled. One more time. Silent. Watching. The ridge was empty now. The Marines below stood slowly, blinking up at her. One of them raised both hands and waved a wild, thankful gesture. Rachel didn't wave back, just dipped her nose once and peeled off toward the sun, back at base. There was no ceremony, no medals, just a flight log and a smirk from the aircrew chief as she climbed down. You still got it, Warrant. She just shrugged. I never lost it. Later that night, Rachel sat on a folding chair outside the hangar, helmet at her feet, arms resting on her knees. The stars were back, clearer than she remembered. The sky had opened for her again, but something inside her had shifted to a quiet knowing that this wasn't about war, or revenge, or redemption anymore. This was about duty, and identity. She flew because it was who she was, because the silence of the cockpit steadied her, because somewhere out there, someone always needed cover, and when that call came, she'd answer, not for medals. Not for glory, but because she knew what it meant to be left behind and vowed no one else would be. A junior pilot passed her on the tarmac. Young, nervous, eyes wide. He stopped. Ma'am, is it true you stayed behind? That time at Ridge 32, all alone? She looked at him. Long pause, then smiled, just slightly. I wasn't alone. My bird stayed with me, and she meant it. The line never ends. Years passed. The war moved on, changed shape, changed names, moved to new maps. But something stayed the same. The dust, the sound of rotors at dawn. and the quiet knowledge that every soldier needed someone watching. From above. Rachel never went back into the headlines. She stayed in, not for rank, not for medals, but because there were still pilots to train, still birds to test, still warriors too young to know what it meant to be left behind, and she would never let them learn that the hard way. They gave her a call sign. Now. Not unofficial. Not whispered, Ghost 1. She didn't ask for it, but it stuck on her last official flight. The sun was just starting to rise. Clear skies, no combat, just a sweep across the valley where it all began. Her co-pilot was a fresh graduate, Warrant Officer Leon, sharp, focused, all nerves. He kept glancing over. Ma'am, you sure you want to fly today? It's your retirement ceremony in 4 hours. Rachel didn't answer at first. She just looked out the window. The ridgeline in the distance was quiet, still scorched in places, still haunted. Then she spoke. One last pass. That's all. They banked left, engines low and steady. The ground slipped beneath them like memory. Rachel adjusted the trim, tapped the dash with an old habit. Her co-pilot noticed. You really flew solo back then. All those enemy positions, no support. She smiled faintly. I had support. From who? She looked ahead, eyes steady. Voice calm. From the bird, from the sky, and from the Marines who were praying I wouldn't leave them. He fell silent, didn't ask again. After the flight, they gathered outside the hangar. Rows of pilots, crew, Marines, officers, no press, no speeches, just silence and respect. One by one, they walked past her. Some shook her hand. Some saluted, some said nothing, just looked her in the eyes like they understood. Then came the final moment. A young pilot stepped forward, nervous. Her name tag read Torres. She held something in her hand, a patch, black silhouette of an Apache over red sand. She held the line. She held it out. Ma'am, I've carried this since flight school. It's not regulation, but it kept me steady. I wanted to give it back. Rachel looked down at it, then shook her head, took it gently, and pressed it into Torres' hand. No, keep it, pass it on. The sky doesn't forget who held the line. That night, she walked the perimeter alone. Same boots, same silence, but no more war, no more mission, just wind. And the soft sound of another Apache lifting off in the distance. She stopped and watched it climb clean, steady, guided by hands that had learned from hers. For a long moment, she stood in its shadow. Then turned. And walked into the dark. No cameras. No applause. Just a quiet exit from a war she never left. Some say the sky holds echoes that if you stand beneath a ridgeline at dawn, in the silence before the heat comes, you can still hear the hum of rotors, of thunder, of a lone pilot who didn't leave. They call her the ghost, but the men she saved, and the pilots she taught, call her something else, guardian, because heroes rise and fall, but guardians, they hold the line. Forever.